Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for responding and saying where you're located. We definitely love seeing where everyone's from and who's joining us on these webinars. Thank you for joining us on this webinar as part of our Robots to the Rescue series, part of our design challenge that we're hosting for first competitors. Tonight, I'm Mackenzie Brunell. I'm an academic application engineer. And then I'll also be joined by my colleagues, Roy and Mark. Roy will be going into the presentation later, and Mark will be there to help answer some questions in the chat as you have those. So feel free to be putting any questions in, and we'll make sure to have some time to get to those. So for tonight's agenda, I'll give a quick overview about the competition that we're hosting, and then we'll get into collaboration and version management, and then we'll definitely have some time to answer any questions that you may have. And so for that design competition, we're hosting a challenge where you can design a robot that solves a current world problem. So your team can define what that problem is and then create a robot in Onshape that will solve that. If you're interested in this, if you haven't signed up yet, you can go onto our website to learn about this and what those rules and guidelines are for the submission. If you sign up for email updates, you can be hearing from us, knowing when more of these webinars are coming up. And if you want any clarifications on any of the rules, always feel free to email first@ptc.com. We love hearing from you, and we definitely know sometimes people have questions. We love to answer those, so don't hesitate to reach out. It is our first time hosting this competition, so we want to make things as clear as possible for you. And some clarifications that we have given since teams have been asking questions about them are alliances. Any number of FRC or FTC teams can form an alliance, and then each team in the alliance will submit your own robot. And then those teams will be scored individually, and then you will get the alliance bonus in your score. And then for the robot requirements, there are the size constraints for both FTC and FRC, but then as far as what's actually legal, we do list out specifically Guystone Manual Section 732 for FTC, and then Infinite Recharge 9.6, the motors and actuators. Other than that, we do suggest using some of the standard components, but nothing else is required. If you look at that judging rubric, which is on the website, you can see what types of points you'll get if you actually adhere to the rules of the game. But then any other rules about robot intent, like if something's sharp or could damage another robot or has liquids, that's totally legal. We aren't worrying so much about the safety here because it's not going to be robots competing on a field with other robots. So if it's something that could solve the problem and doesn't meet those typical rules, that's totally okay. And then for resources, in addition to these webinars, we have on our Learning Center some different learning paths for people who are new to CAD or those who are already familiar with it, but are just switching into the Onshape platform. And then if you need parts libraries, if you're looking for some of those standard components that are typically found in your program, for FRC, we definitely recommend the MKCAD part library. And then for FTC, Team 2901 also created a part library that you can email us to get access to. And just a reminder, May 1st, we're going to be starting to send out that submission form to your team. And then you should be submitting by May 15th. And then throughout that period, we've been holding a series of webinars, and then we'll have some more coming up soon. And so you can find recordings for those webinars that have already happened. So the introduction to Onshape, working with the kit of parts, migrating from another CAD system, and collaboration and versioning is tonight. So you'll get that recording after this. It'll be posted on our YouTube channel. And then coming up next week, we have a team panel and Q&A session where we'll have some teams that have been using Onshape for a few seasons answer some of your questions that you might have and give some of their best practices. Then we'll have a session about preparing your submission. And then an office hour, we can answer any last minute questions you may have before you submit, either about Onshape or about your submission. And again, if you have any questions, definitely feel free to use the chat, or you can be emailing us at first@ptc.com. And then just one more poll for you. If you wouldn't mind answering, you can go to this URL to answer. We're just curious, how many people on your team usually CAD? Three? Yeah, definitely something I like about Onshape, and I think you'll see tonight that'll be really helpful, is a lot of people can be using CAD. I know for my team when I was in high school, we definitely had way fewer people using it because we had MacBooks, so only the people who had other computers could do it. So definitely excited to show you some of those capabilities that will help you to get to 5+ like it seems some people have and some teams have. We definitely love for your whole team to be able to access and look at your CAD. If not, I'll be working on it. Great. And with that, I think I'll switch over to Roy so we can actually give the presentation.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Mackenzie there. Let's see if I can share my screen now. All right. So hopefully at this point you guys are seeing my screen. Tonight I'm going to be presenting on seamless collaboration and version management within Onshape. And this is really one of the features of Onshape that we've been given feedback that first teams find very beneficial in when using a tool. So I always like to start by introducing Onshape as a whole as a source of instant CAD access. And this is something that now I've been with Onshape here for almost 2 years, and it doesn't cease to amaze me even at that point, even at this point here, in using Onshape every day. It really is instant CAD access. So I always introduce these as that being a premise or a real piece of Onshape that is so important. Looks like I'm already signed in over here. Let's jump over. I'm going to get into Onshape real quick to get started. I'm going to put in my email and password into a browser in cad.onshape.com and use it on any system you'd like. So again, you guys might know this stuff already. This might be a review, but I'm actually running it on a MacBook Pro that's 5 years old. And that is what I use to do my job here every day. This is what I run Onshape in. We are really platform agnostic. You can use it on a Windows PC, of course. You can use it on Linux. You can use it on an iPad, an iPhone, an Android device via our apps. We are really system agnostic, and that allows us to get into our full CAD tool here in this case without any downloads or installs whatsoever. So I always really like to highlight this. I come from the world of a traditional install-based tool where you have to download gigabytes of data and install software, and Onshape is so much more accessible than a tool like that, and teams love it for that reason. I'm going to jump into a document here really quickly as well to talk about one other piece of the instant access and the accessibility of the tool. So because, of course, we can sign in from any device and anywhere as long as you have an internet access, your data is always accessible. Nothing is being downloaded or stored locally on your machine. It's always being pulled from the single source of the truth that exists in the Onshape servers. One other piece I really like to highlight that we'll talk about a little bit more, of course, Onshape has CAD. So your parts, your assemblies, your drawings, we can create those natively within Onshape. But as a platform, you can store any type of data. So as an example, here I have a rendering that's just a screenshot, an image that's stored within it here. I might have a technical data sheet that's a PDF, and it's also stored right within this document. And so this extends the accessibility of it as a platform to store all of the data. And of course, teams using Onshape have much more than just CAD data on many occasions that they're using as a part of their design. And so it creates one single place. You don't have to spread it out across flash drives, or hopefully nobody's using flash drives. Maybe you're using Google Drive or something like that. But now we can store it all within Onshape. Additionally, we even have integrations that connect Google Drive that would allow you to store data there and see it directly within Onshape. So again, by way of introducing Onshape, I always like to start with that. Instant CAD access is such a big piece of what Onshape is about, and it's a huge piece of the functionalities that you're going to see that really make it so powerful. So I'll summarize kind of my points here in just a short sentence here. So instant CAD access, I say it as be productive. No matter what hardware, no matter where you are, you're going to have access to your data. You're going to be able to keep designing. You're going to keep working on these robots. You're not restricted by having to, walk to that CAD lab. And I certainly remember the experiences of that, walking to the 5th floor CAD lab in my engineering building in college, or even in high school, having to walk to the C hallway to get to the computers that had it installed. So be productive, no matter what hardware, no matter where you are. And I would venture a guess many of you probably don't have CAD laptops, and that's why Onshape is going to be such a benefit. Run it on whatever device you have sitting at home. Great. So with that as a way of introduction, what we really want to focus on today are a few different pieces of collaboration within Onshape. And again, really what makes it unique as a tool and so powerful. when designing teams. And so I'm going to start with how we share data within Onshape. So once again, I'm signed in here to my Onshape account. I'm in as a user named Roy, and I'd like to share this with a member of my team. His name happens to be Thomas. So many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Google Docs as a way of sharing data, that you create a document and you simply allow somebody else access into that document. Well, it's really the same concept here within Onshape. I'm going to select the document here that I'm looking at, this robotic arm I had just opened. And in order to allow my my user here, my friend Thomas in, I'm going to hit the share button in the top right corner. And so this dialog might even look familiar to you. In order to allow them access, I simply type in the email address of the individual I'd like to share with. So let's go ahead and put in Thomas. I happen to have shared things with him in the past, so he pops up nicely for me here. You can share with any individual, whether they have an Onshape account or not. So in many cases, I'm sure the other individuals that you're collaborating with on these designs will have their Onshape accounts already. But keep in mind that even if they do not, typing in their email will allow them to create an Onshape account directly from there. So I'm going to share with Thomas. As I'm sharing with him, I'll point out one other piece here. I can be very granular with the permissions that I'm allowing this individual to have to this document. So this robotic arm is something that I've been working on. So maybe, I don't want him to make changes to it. I just need him to see it. So I've changed my permission set here to view. And now I'm only allowing Thomas view access. Again, many of you might be saying, yeah, of course, this is very familiar to us in the way that we use Google Drive. So it's a similar concept, very easy to assign permission sets. In this example, maybe I'll give him edit permission. I'm going to deny him the permission to copy, link, export, or further share. I'm basically saying this user, this individual, should just be working on my design. He shouldn't be taking anything else out. He shouldn't be making copies. He certainly shouldn't be deleting. And we'll just go ahead and hit the share button. And that's all it takes to give Thomas now access to my design. So what I'll do here, I'm going to bring Thomas up on the right side of my screen. So I'm signed in a different sort of browser window here. So notice you've got the user Thomas, and this is on the left is Roy. What I'll actually do is jump to Thomas's email here. And if we refresh his email, he's got a few emails from Onshape. Notice he just got one here that states he was shared into a document. And so there's that, the link there. He can even click the link itself here. And because he's already signed in this browser window, it'll take him directly to that document. And because Thomas was shared in now, he'll be able to open it up. And it'll take just a moment for that document to open. So that's all it took for me to give Thomas access to my design. And in this case, full edit permission to it. I didn't have to save down a file. I didn't have to email it to him. I didn't even have to do an upload or any type of a sync to a shared drive. I just allowed him access via the share button. So it's really as simple as that. So let's build on this a little bit, this concept of sharing. Now, we can, of course, share with individuals, just as I showed, by typing in their email, but you'll often want to share a lot of data with a group of individuals. So what's particularly useful within Onshape is the concept of creating teams. From the top right corner, I'm going to go into my settings here, and I'm going to actually create a team of users. And I can actually group together, perhaps we'll call this team the design team. And so I'm creating a group, including individual team members here. So maybe we'll pick Thomas in there. Maybe I'll even pick another user that's a free user. In this case, just using my personal email address, which is not a paid license of Onshape, of course. So this user may or may not have created an Onshape account at all, and we've added them to a team here. And now what we can actually do is share entire data sets with teams. So once again, from that share button, or from a right click and a share here, I can choose now to select a team. And I'll grab that design team. And it's going to prescribe those permission sets to everyone in that grouping all at once. So now if I go ahead and bring over here, I've got that free user here. This is my personal email address. Notice he's not seeing access to that robotic arm yet. I'll just refresh, and suddenly, because he's been shared in, it shows up as available to him. So this is a great way to be able to group and share data more quickly. You'll also want to use folders as a great way to share data. So in here, I have a projects folder, and we can simply create folders from the create button and drag and drop data into them. At this point, you'll notice the user Thomas, if we go back to his homepage, does not have access to any of the data in that projects folder. But what I'll do here really quickly is I'll choose to share him into the entire folder. Now the trick here is you want to select and highlight the folder. Don't click the name of it, because that will actually drop you into the folder itself. So make sure it's highlighted, and then you can choose to hit the share button here. So I'm now prescribing permissions to the entire folder. I can once again do it via individuals. So I could type in the individuals I need, or I could do it via team here of that design team. And so all at once, I'm giving edit permission, again, removing the permission sets I don't want for all documents within that team. You can also revoke access to data at any point in time. So this user, Thomas, currently has access to the robotic arm. And if we refresh the screen, it'll actually show up for him here that you can see it. I can actually remove access to that from getting back to the share button for this. I'll just pull it out here, and I'll remove the design team as well. So now if I actually refresh this, this user no longer sees that access. He's lost permission to access that robotic arm. But leveraging folders is really a convenient way to work with this, because if I ever need to give that permission, I can drag and drop this into that project's folder. And suddenly, if he navigates into it, he sees that and therefore gains access. So the share tool within Onshape is a very powerful way of giving other individuals access to data. And again, there's no copying of files, there's no moving of data or tracking of references that's needed with that. It all happens natively where the data is stored. We're simply giving access to it. So using that in conjunction with groups of users, groups of individuals, and folders is a great way to be able to manage who is accessing what data, what documents. So that's just a little bit on our share button here. Again, to kind of summarize that, the point of share is you want to focus on your design, not on getting the data to the users, right? We want to be able to innovate. We want to be able to iterate on these robots that we're working on here. And it shouldn't be a struggle of getting the data back and forth, or even what version of a file you're looking at. And we'll talk about that in just another couple of minutes here. So moving right along here, we've now shared another individual into our data. How can we collaborate or work together? And so let's take a look at a couple of ways that we can actually work with another individual and how we can understand that other individuals are working on our designs. So let's use this robotic arm as an example again here. I'm going to go ahead and open it up here as the user Roy. And I'm also going to go ahead and open it up as the user Thomas. And let's jump back to the main assembly in both cases here. So we're both looking at the top level assembly. The first thing that we'll notice is social cues, as we call them. In the top corner of the screen, in both cases, we're seeing that another user is in the document. So over here on my left screen, here's the user Roy. He's seeing the user Thomas in the document. And similarly on the right screen, Thomas is seeing the user Roy. And what we can actually do, because that's the case, is we're looking at the same source of data, we can work together in real time. So maybe as an example here, I'll create a comment. And I'll choose to tag Thomas in the comment using either the @ sign and typing his username or clicking his face because he happens to be in the document. And I'll say, maybe we need to change the color of the second stage. I'll zoom, pan, rotate. I'll even use purpose-built tools here of what we call our tag entity button to select what I'm talking about. And so I've selected that second stage there, and I'll even assign that as a task for this user, Thomas, for this individual. And we'll go ahead and hit the assign. Notice immediately it's going to pop up on Thomas's screen on the right. So in real time, we've been able to have a conversation about design changes that are needed, and it's being captured directly in the document itself. The user Thomas can take a look at that comment. He can even select the hyperlink here, and it zooms, pans, rotates him to the exact orientation and highlights exactly what I was pointing to here. So we're really able to see and understand what changes are needed very explicitly. So maybe Thomas will make a change here. He wants to change the color of this second stage. So the first thing he's going to do is navigate to the part where that was defined. And it happens to be in a part studio here. Maybe just to make things a little bit easier, he'll hide the other parts and he'll make a change to the appearance here, making it maybe a nice green color. And as soon as he makes that change, notice that it updates on the left for the user Roy. So again, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with Google Docs. This is probably not news other than the fact we're extending that functionality to CAD users now, to CAD functionality. That as we're actually making design changes to this model, it's going to live update for us. So this is one way that we can collaborate through comments now. Thomas can even reopen that comment and choose to mark it as resolved now that the change of color has been completed. Another nice feature that we can use in as far as collaboration goes is what we call follow mode. So of course, in this day and age of us all being remote and working on our designs, certainly not in the same room in many cases, it might be nice to look over somebody's shoulder and see what they're doing, particularly if they're having trouble with some aspect of design. And we can do that directly through Onshape in what we call the follow mode. So the user on the left here, Roy, maybe he wants to see what Thomas is actually being up to as he's making changes. He can actually come up to his social cue here and double click on him. And notice it's automatically going to jump me to where Thomas is in the document, even if it's in a different tab. And I'm actually now live following Thomas. So as he moves his cursor on screen, I'm actually seeing that. As he zooms, pans, rotates, as he selects faces, I'm actually understanding and seeing on my screen what he's doing in real time. And I'll mention this follow mode is available across devices as well. So of course I'm doing it on one computer here, one MacBook Pro, but you can have it Windows to Mac, you can have it iPhone to Android device, you can have it iPad to a computer of your choice. It is really system agnostic. You can use it on any device here. So this is a great way to review designs as well and work together in a collaborative environment again, directly in the document. Once again, I really am following him. So as long as Thomas stays within this document, he can move freely between tabs, he could select different elements, and I'm really seeing live what he's working on. He can choose to maybe reposition this, and you can see as he's making these changes, they're of course updating for me live as well here. So follow mode is another really nice feature for collaboration. The last one I'll show here really quickly is just a view only link, and it sort of extends the sharing functionality. So let's kind of close out of sharing here real quick. Let's go to full screen. In sharing, you can collaborate also via a view only link. So what I'm going to do as the user Roy, who has the ability to share this, I'm going to turn on link sharing. And link sharing, what this is now a public URL that if anybody is given access to this URL, they can actually view this data. So I'm going to choose to open an incognito window here so that I'm not signed into Onshape, and I'm going to paste that link. And now this is a, oops, I'm already signed in here. Let me sign out of that and try pasting again here. So this is now a view-only access to this design. So this is sort of a one-directional link, but it is another nice way to be able to allow individuals to see what you're working on. So notice at this point that I am not signed into Onshape at all. But what I've actually succeeded in doing here, as soon as this opens up, is I'm seeing a live view of the robot arm assembly here. Let's try to refresh it here real quick. We'll give that a moment to come up. I'll keep moving in the meantime here, but I'll keep this window available. So this is another nice way of being able to collaborate here. We do so via social cues that tell us when other users are in the document, and we can utilize follow mode and commenting as just two of the ways to actually collaborate in real time within a document. So my summary of this here is, of course, design is better as a team, and Onshape allows us to know who's working on what. So we can have an environment where we have 5, 6, in theory, an infinite number of individuals all looking at the exact same document at the same time and working within it with the ability to edit. And we always know who's working on what through these social cues. All right. Next, we're going to move on to integrated version management. So the next question that always comes up is, great, if we have all these individuals in the document at the same time, how do we keep track of who's doing what, and how is it not just pandemonium? And that's handled through our integrated version management in Onshape. I'm going to continue to work on this robotic arm here. So my friend Thomas just made some changes here. He made this green in color. Perhaps at this point in time, I really like the way that this design has progressed. I like the way that it looks. I want to remember this as it's an important milestone in our design. Within Onshape, all changes are automatically captured within what's called our version in history. And we can take a look at that here, expanding it from the versions in history icon in the top left. And so you can see all of the changes, everything that we did here, that appearance change, even the 2 drag moves that Thomas did to reposition the robot show up in the history. And this is a full trail of every design change that's happened. So these already exist as markers in that we could actually restore back to any element in this history. So I could go back to just before I made that change and I could restore. And now I'm back to what that robot looked like previously before the color change was made. Notice that the restore element is already there, so I can even undo a restore. I'm basically time traveling here. But extending that functionality, as you can see, the history gets very long very quickly because every change is being captured. So what we can instead do is capture what we call versions. And a version, just by clicking that button right there, just next to your versions in history, is a marker that becomes very apparent in the history. And so I'll just call this one green second stage, giving it something descriptive of what that is. And we'll see here now within this document, I have a very apparent marker that at this time, this user decided to call out, this is the green second stage version. What this means is that at any point, it makes it very easy to restore back. And so I always like to kind of demonstrate that by doing this. I'm going to actually wipe out my entire design. I'll even come in and delete a whole bunch of elements here. And let's say we close down the document. So everything I've done looks catastrophic. I can open the document again. And if we take a look, everything, of course, is missing because it's been deleted. But because we created a version, it is very easy to get right back to where we were. So I'm going to right click on that version in the history here, and I'm going to restore. And I'm right back to before all of those changes occurred, all of those deletes. So versions make it very safe even though you can have a handful of people all working on a design, you can create versions to remember important points in the history. And there's no way to get rid of a version. The word we use to describe it is it's immutable. Not even an administrator can go in and remove a version. So they're very, very powerful. You can make versions for a wide variety of reasons. So in the example I just showed, perhaps I would have wanted to create a version before I shared this out with Thomas because I know he's going to make some design changes. Maybe I want to create versions to iterate. So here I've got a green arm. Maybe I'll switch over here and I'll change the color once again. And I'm just doing a color change because it's very quick and very apparent. But of course, we can make any type of design change to this. So now notice it's a red arm here. I'll just call this V5 red. And I'll do another one really quickly here. Let's let that load back up here. And let's change the color one more time here to a dark blue. And again, I'll make a version. Remember, versions are across your entire document. It's versioning everything in the document at once. So now what I've done is I've actually iterated my design very quickly, but I haven't lost any data as a process of this. So in a traditional tool, you'd have to save these as copies and have 3 different files if you wanted to show your team 3 potential iterations. But in Onshape, it's all captured as versions. So of course, there's my dark blue one. Very quickly, I can select, here's my red one, and here's my green one. And if the team says, you know what, we actually like the red one the best, that's no problem. In my workspace, notice that my dark blue is the most recent because that's the one I last created. But I'll simply right-click the red and restore. And I'm right back to designing from the point in time when this arm was red in color. So versions are also a very powerful way to be able to iterate your designs. So very quickly, again, I went through integrated version management, again, handled just by clicking the create version button. And the way I would just summarize this is never lose work, ever. As long as you're capturing versions, or in theory, even if you're not, you always have the history available to you. And versions are just going to make that history easy to manage and easy to understand. And once you create a version, it is immutable. Nothing anybody can do will ever be able to get rid of that version. I suppose shy of deleting the document and destroying the document itself. But hold that permission close to your chest there. Don't let that one out to other users to delete and destroy data. And as long as you do that and you use those versions, you'll never head down a wrong path and find yourself doing rework. You'll never have a crash that causes you to lose data. You'll never have a user that edits something incorrectly that causes you to lose work. It just will not happen. So that is actually most of the content I had to share today. As a real bonus, I wanted to give kind of a reminder or shout out to the MKCAD Library in Onshape. It sounds like in a previous webinar we did cover this, but it is available for use just searching public for MKCAD. You can find a library of components directly that are available to just be dropped right into your designs. And of course, all of that will play nicely. It's all a function of sharing, of course, how that's done, that these have been shared out and you can link to them and use them as you collaborate on your designs as well. So with that, I will actually wrap up for today with my content here. I want to thank you all for your attendance here. I have a couple of resources here to share with you here. Of course, a link to our page on the Onshape website. There's also some resources on learn.onshape.com, our learning center, great resources to be able to further dig into both of these functionalities I talked about today, the version management, including something called branching, which I did not touch on, that extends that one step further. And of course, collaboration and working with multiple users in the same environment and really how powerful that can be. I also have a link there to our forums. Do take a look there. There's a lot of great information, a lot of great discussions going on the Onshape forums there as well about different usages and some really powerful things, including feature script, which is a topic for another day entirely, but really, really powerful functionality. So with that, again, thank you all so much for your attendance. My name is Roy Mutalik. My contact info there is below, so feel free to reach out if you do have further specific questions. And otherwise, what I will do, I think hopefully we have some time to take any questions that may have come in through the chat.
Yes, people can definitely feel free to ask any questions. One other thing I just wanted to point out with the versioning that's really helpful for all of these teams is when you're going to create documentation after the season, I know something that a lot of teams run into is that you forget to write down the kind of design changes you went through. And so that's one of the things that I know gets talked about a lot in the pit interviews for FRC. And you need to kind of keep that in your engineering notebook for FTC. So it's a really great way if you kind of forgot to capture some of those iterations or you want to go back and make some of that documentation, you could be doing that by going back through your version history, and it really captures all of that for you as you go along.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic point. The version in history, if I didn't mention, is infinite. It goes back as far as old as your document is. There is no limit to that. So you can literally go back to the first feature that the first individual created in the first tab of that document, and you can go all the way back there. So again, really highlighting that point, never lose data ever. Nothing is ever lost in Onshape.
If anybody has any question, about the competition or about specifically anything we went over today, please feel free to use the Q&A panel, and we're happy to take any questions you might have. None yet.
I'm sure if there aren't questions now, once you dive in and start using some of these functions or take a look at some of those tutorials in the Onshape Learning Center, I'm sure there will be. So do feel free to let us know, of course, afterwards.
Yeah, I think we've got our first one here, which I'm sure usually it takes one to break the ice. So is there a way to set up a team as a company?
A team as a company.
Carlos, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on what you might mean there in terms of a company?
So what I was actually showing, perhaps I can try to give a little bit of context. What I was showing, I actually have a company settings here because I am in a professional license of Onshape that I'm using. And that's where there is a concept of a company. And so you may have noticed in my share dialog, I have this companies that I can share with that includes this fake company that I'm a part of here. Typically in the licenses that, the EDU licenses, the free licenses that each of you would more than likely be having access to, you do not have the concept of a company. And so I kind of skipped over that. So I'm not sure if that answers the question or helps clarify a little bit. And that's why you would certainly want to use teams rather than a company as a whole. So I'm not sure if that clarifies it all as well. Again, the idea of what I introduced was creating a group of individuals that you want to share data with, and then it makes it really quick and easy to do via folders or via just documents themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that you're not really missing anything by not having a company. It's, a company from a sharing perspective is the same as a team. It's a collection of users so that you don't have to type everybody in individually. So.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm not seeing any further questions, which is fine. Mackenzie, do you want to close us out here?
Sure. should all see my screen now. So just a reminder, we do have a few more webinars coming up. Next is going to be a team panel question and answer session. So we have several teams that have been using Onshape for a few years that have a lot of experience in it, so they can kind of talk you through some of the things they've done. So like the questions about setting up a team, they have some best practices and what they've done and sharing and how they've worked together. So there's some definitely some tips that they've gathered and some things, some features that they really find useful that they can share and talk about and answer any questions about. And then we'll have a session about preparing your submission. So that'll be talking about what that should look like. We have an example submission on our website. So we'll walk through that and talk about what the submission should look like, what we're actually looking for in that 3-page document. And then finally, we'll have a Robust to the Rescue office hours. So that's any questions about Onshape or about submitting, whatever you had that's still left over. Once you kind of dive more into using these features, if you have any remaining questions, we're definitely happy to answer any of those. And with that, you can feel free to email us at any time if you have questions or need clarifications or want access to that FTC part library at first@ptc.com. We definitely love hearing from you all, even if it's something that you realize there's a feature you really like or you don't, or that's something that you kind of noticed that you want to give us feedback on. We love hearing from you, so definitely feel free to email us at any time. And thank you again for joining. And thank you, Roy, for speaking with us and sharing your knowledge.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.